Queen came to the throne, she was only 26, and Churchill made the remark to his private secretary, but she's a child. But she wasn't a child. She was very sophisticated and mature mentally, and it was a man's world, and women were really subservient in those days, and the Queen was walking into this world of men who were all much, much older than her. And also she hadn't really been taught. She said there was no way to be taught. All she did was she watched what her father did and followed him. So of course the court was very old-fashioned and very stuffy, because it was really her father's court. Well, Prince Philip had been in the Royal Navy. He was still in the Royal Navy when he married, so he was used to routine and regulations of royal life. But what he wasn't used to was the way the courtiers treated him, because they saw him as a foreigner and an interloper, and probably someone that wouldn't be faithful to his wife. So they didn't like him at all, and they made it very plain that they didn't like him. So he had a very, very difficult time. Very difficult indeed, and also eventually had to be 2 steps behind his wife. In the beginning, they had a very, very happy marriage, very happy marriage. They had Clarence House as their marital home, and they also had a country house which they rented in Windlesham Manor. So they had it all at the beginning, but it was for such a short time. I think the day-to-day life of the monarch is very regimented. I mean, she would be woken, that's about 7:30. She would have, her dresser would come in with a cup of tea and some biscuits for the dogs. Her clothes would be laid out. She would dress, have breakfast, and then read the newspapers and listen to the radio, and then her day would start, and her private secretary would bring her important letters to look at and sign. And then every 20 minutes during the day, there is an appointment. So it's the same every day during the working week. So it is a very regimented life.
At this moment of my Silver Jubilee, I want to thank all those in Britain and the Commonwealth who, through their loyalty and friendship, have given me strength and encouragement during these last 25 years. My thanks go also to the many thousands who have sent me messages of congratulations on my Silver Jubilee, that and their good wishes for the future. My Lord Mayor, when I was 21, I pledged my life to the service of our people, and I asked for God's help to make good that vow. Although that vow was made in my salad days when I was green in judgment, I do not regret nor retract one word of it.
Since Elizabeth rarely gave interviews, little is known of her personal feelings. As a constitutional monarch, she has not expressed her own political opinions in a public forum. She did have a deep sense of religious and civic duty and took her coronation oath seriously.
I think the characteristics that spring to mind to me are that she is stable, she's diligent, and she has an extraordinary ability to put duty before everything. And that is, you know, a characteristic that really doesn't exist anymore. But the Queen was probably the last person, you know, to decide that duty was everything. Duty became before personal happiness. Duty became before family and children. And that is the characteristic that defines her. And I think her stability also defines her, and the fact that she looks very somber, but then, you know, her face can crack into the most wonderful smile, and we learn over the years about her sense of humor and her ability with mimicry. So we've got to know her, but very gradually. Well, 1992 was the worst year of the Queen's life. And she gave a speech at the Mansion House in London towards the end of 92. And she said she was going to refer to the year as an annus horribilis. And we all knew why, because it was, there was her daughter, Princess Anne, was separated, divorced, and remarried at the end of the year. Well, the remarriage was happy, but so her daughter's marriage had broken down. Fergie and Andrew's marriage had broken down, but far the worst thing was the breakdown of the marriage of the Prince and Princess of Wales, and the official announcement that they were going to split. And then on top of all that came the fire at Windsor Castle on the Queen's anniversary. A curtain caught upon a light in the chapel at Windsor Castle, and it just blazed, and the fire raced through all the state apartments. It was a huge fire. But lucky, very, very few things were lost, but it was devastating. And then the Prime Minister asked the country if they would be prepared to pay for the reconstruction of Windsor Castle. And basically, the Queen's subjects said no. I mean, although Windsor Castle is an official state building, not her own, the general consensus was that we didn't want to pay for it. So then the Queen had to pay tax. And it just really wasn't a good year.
"1992 is not a year on which I shall look back with undiluted pleasure. In the words of one of my more sympathetic correspondents, it has turned out to be an annus horribilis. I sometimes wonder how future generations will judge the events of this tumultuous year. I dare say that history will take a slightly more moderate view than that of some contemporary commentators. He who has never failed to reach perfection has a right to be the harshest critic. There can be no doubt, of course, that criticism is good for people and institutions that are part of public life. No institution, city, monarchy, whatever, should expect to be free from the scrutiny of those who give it their loyalty and support, not to mention those who don't. But we are all part of the same fabric of our national society, and that scrutiny by one part of another can be just as effective if it is made with a touch of gentleness, good humor, and understanding. This sort of questioning can also act, and it should do so, as an effective engine for change.
I think that the death of Princess Diana was the biggest crisis of the Queen's reign, and probably something that historically she will be judged by. And I think despite the film The Queen and despite The Crown, people still think the Queen handled it badly and didn't seem to understand what her subjects were feeling and thinking. But I think the Queen didn't understand, because traditionally, the royal family, when there is a death, and there've been many, many, they mourn quietly amongst themselves. And the Queen thought, because of William and Harry, it would be utter cruelty to expose them to crowds of wailing people, and that they must be kept at Balmoral. But it actually was wrong, as it turned out. But she remedied the situation, but I think it will still be seen as probably one of the disasters of her reign.
But I think our children have done rather well under very different and difficult and demanding circumstances. I hope we can be forgiven for feeling rather proud of them. And I'm also encouraged to see what a good start the next generation is making. I think that the main lesson that we've learned is that tolerance is the one essential ingredient of any happy marriage. It may not be quite so important when things are going well, but it is absolutely vital when things get difficult. And you can take it from me that the Queen has the quality of tolerance and abundance.
I think many people have asked the Queen and asked Prince Philip what is the secret of their relationship, and the Queen has spoken out on a few occasions, and she said patience, sense of humour, and she said famously, of course, that Prince Philip had simply been her rock and her stay over the years, and he'd always been there to support her. Although he never involved himself in constitutional affairs, he was there as a sounding board. He was someone to listen and someone who would be on her side or would give her criticism, which of course nobody else really could.
All too often, I fear Prince Philip has had to listen to me speaking. Frequently, we have discussed my intended speech beforehand, and as you will imagine, his views have been expressed in a forthright manner. He is someone who doesn't take easily to compliments, but he has quite simply been my strength and stay all these years. And I and his whole family, and this and many other countries, owe him a debt greater than he would ever claim, or we shall ever know.
On the 9th of April 2021, Prince Philip sadly passed away at 99, only 2 months before his 100th birthday, leaving Elizabeth all alone after their 73 eventful years spent together.
I particularly wanted to say that my father, I suppose the last 70 years, has given the most remarkable, devoted service to the Queen, to my family, and to the country, and also to the whole of the Commonwealth. And as you can imagine, my family and I miss my father enormously. He was a much-loved and appreciated figure